Welcome to B-Flow Sessions, the podcast where we help you find and stay in the flow on the water and in life. I'm your host, Brad Burton. Join me as I sit down with paddlers, athletes, and adventurers who are all seeking the flow. B-Flow Sessions is brought to you by our friends at Pecan Kayak Retreat. Are you dreaming of a Chilean whitewater escape this winter? Picture turquoise rapids, warm sunny days, and world-class rivers for every skill level, all based out of a riverside retreat built by paddlers for paddlers. If that sounds like your kind of winter, then Pecan Kayak Retreat is the place. To learn more or to book your dream kayak trip, reach out to me directly at bflowkayak@gmail.com and I'll help you get connected. Also, thanks to our partners who keep us in the flow: Dagger Kayaks, Stohlquist Waterwear, Sawyer Paddles, and Level 6 Gear. B-Flow Sessions is powered by Dagger Kayaks. Wherever there's water, Dagger Kayaks will help you find your flow. Team-tested, paddler-proven designs for all paddlers and all water. And thanks to our partners at Sawyer Paddles, Stohlquist PFDs, and Level 6 Gear for keeping us in the flow. Welcome to the next episode of B-Flow Sessions. I'm Brad Burton, and tonight I am joined by a legend in the paddle sports industry. Somebody, I mean, he's kind of, laughing there when I say legend, but he definitely is. I mean, he's in the International Whitewater Hall of Fame, one of the founders and former CEO of Dagger Kayaks, Joe Pulliam. Joe, welcome to B-Flow Sessions.
Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, so it's just, it's great to see you, great to catch up. And, Dagger was such a huge part of my life, and now is again as the official sponsor of B-Flow Sessions. And I'm stoked to get to be paddling Dagger Kayaks again. And they're everywhere. I mean, Dagger Kayaks have been, such a legacy for the past 40, 50 years, it seems like. And, you were one of the founding fathers of that, and we want to hear all about it. But again, not just founding Dagger Kayaks, but an amazing paddler yourself. So again, Joe, welcome to the podcast, and thanks for being on the chat with us.
Thank you.
So tell us, how did you find your flow in kayaking? And then, tell us, about the first days of Dagger Kayaks as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd started off canoeing before ever kayaking, but not really whitewater. And so while I really enjoyed that, in fact, when I went off to college, I went to Clemson, which is only 20 miles from the Chattooga River, and I drove to Clemson with my Grumman 15-foot Grumman canoe on top of my Ford Pinto, and so I was kind of into the paddling thing, but got to Clemson and met people who paddled kayaks, and boy, that was I don't think that anything I did over the next 40, 50 years of paddling ever exceeded the excitement of that first year of paddling, and just meeting all these really great people and learning about rivers, and especially the Chattooga River, which was right there, and starting to make boats, which I started making boats in 1973. And that whole experience and how that just really transformed my life. It was incredibly special times with wonderful memories.
And what were you studying at Clemson?
Business.
Okay, well that ended up coming in handy.
I studied kayaking and a few other things, a lot more than business, but that was supposedly my major. Yeah.
And then, after Clemson, I know you went to work for Perception for a while. Talk about those first days with Perception Kayaks.
Yeah, well, I had right out of college, I went to work for a bank as a repo man, and then decided after, I worked there and with various other jobs there too, but did that for about 4 years, and just, I definitely learned that I was never going to be a banker, and didn't take long to realize that this idea of just working for money just didn't quite just didn't quite suit me. There needed to be more, and
Sure.
and I actually left there and went to grad school as in environmental science, which is something I had a real interest in and still do, and had been there for less than a year, and I got a letter from Bill Masters, who owned Perception, saying, I need help. You interested in coming down here and going to work? And it was bad timing, but yeah, I'd drop whatever I was doing and spent the next 5 years. I think that's about right at Perception. So that's where I really learned, the business side of paddle sports, which was, very in its infancy at that point. And Perception was a little company of about maybe 15 or 20 people when I started there, and had our sales were about $1.5 million, and we actually ran ads saying that we had a 70%, I think, market share of kayaks in the United States, and that was all kayaks, not just whitewater.
Right.
Because there basically was nothing else. There were
Right.
sea kayaks, wreck kayaks, that only existed on a very small scale, and anyhow, that's where I sort of got into the learning about the business side of it, and after 5 years or so there, that was not working out so well for me, and I left and went to work briefly for the Blue Hole Canoe Company in Sunbright, Tennessee, and which had been in business for about 15 years at the time, and I thought had untapped potential, and but they were struggling, and I knew they were struggling before I went there. I didn't realize how bad, they didn't matter what I did so much. They were just in such deep hole with the bank, and it was a losing battle, and I only stayed there about 3 months, and then we made an attempt to purchase Blue Hole from its majority owner. And I say we, that was me, Steve Scarborough, Roy Gwynn, who actually worked for Blue Hole for its really the entire time, and Pete Jett, who had been my college roommate. And we made an offer to buy Blue Hole, which was turned down by the majority owner. And so we decided, none of us really wanted to get a real job, and this is what we knew, that I think there's an opportunity to start something new, and we talked about it, and we did, and we had very little to work with other than experience and passion and some knowledge, but in terms of financial resources, we were pretty pitiful.
Well, but you use those three skills to get the finances later on. I want to hear, and I know in other podcasts it's been addressed, but put to rest once and for all the urban legend of the foundation of the name and where it came from.
Well, I'm not sure what urban legends there are. I've heard a couple, but the name Dagger goes back. So Keith Backlund, who is a legendary kayak and canoe paddle maker, and good friend, had used the name Dagger in probably the late '60s. He and a guy named Drew Hunter. They were both slalom racers. Used the name Dagger and made, I think, probably a couple of dozen paddles using the Dagger name. And fast forward to the mid to late '70s, the Dagger, mid '70s, the Dagger name resurfaced with with paddle company that was owned by Keith and Bill Masters and Don Hamilton and Steve Scarborough. And they used the Dagger name for their paddles that were made using anything more than manual tools, and used the New World paddle on the ones that Keith carved by hand. And eventually that all fell apart. Steve Scarborough and his friend Brandy Leeson took over using the Dagger Paddle Company name. So it's been around for a long time. And sort of the earliest, you can sort of trace, sometimes we talk about tracing the earliest, the origins of Dagger to a party that Steve and I both were at Robert and Tina Harrison's business of their raft, Whetstone Photography, their business of photographing raft customers. And I think this is legit saying that Steve and I first talked about getting together and talking about business as we were under a table. And I can't quite remember the details as to why we were under a table, but I can imagine some possibilities. And so we started hanging. I'd left my job at Perception. Steve and I started hanging out at Chattooga, paddling more, riding my mountain bike, hanging out at some property that I owned there, and we started talking. That led into the Blue Hole thing, mm-hmm. So when Blue Hole wasn't working out so well, we started trying to figure out what else we could do, and we just Steve and Pete and Roy and I decided, well, let's start a new canoe company. And what are we going to call it? And we threw around some ideas, but we decided to use the Dagger name, which Steve had been using. Steve and his wife Annie had been using for their paddle company. Partly because it didn't have a lot of brand recognition outside of the Southeast, but they made really nice paddles and were real highly regarded in the Southeast. But also they had established credit some places. And we had no money, and credit was critical. Yeah. So we decided to use the Dagger name as much for credit reasons as anything else. And we could only be slightly fudging the truth by using Steve and Annie's credit accounts as our own. And that's why we use the Dagger name.
What about
It's a good name.
It is a good name. Yeah, it's a great name. I mean, it's stuck and it's iconic, and maybe even more iconic is the logo. I've got, if anybody's watching this on YouTube or Spotify, the logo here on my, on the jacket I'm wearing, kind of to me it looks like the top down view of the outline of a kayak with a wave going through it. That's the way I always described it. What is that logo exactly, and what was the origin stories of the logo?
So I think I was not told the full story on the logo when when it first happened, because the way I remember it was getting a package in the mail from a guy I'd never heard of, and I opened up the package, and inside that is a 90% finished logo that was virtually unchanged from what you see on your jacket there. And I remember, like, wow, I've been wanting a logo. We'd probably been in business for I don't know, a year, 2 years at this point. So this is probably 1989, 1990, 91, somewhere right in there. And it was from a guy named Mike Womack, who is a paddler I think from Memphis. And that's the way I thought that it all happened for many years. And only in the last 10 years or so, I've heard a different version of it. I need to ask Mike. He's the one that would really know.
Right.
But Tom Wyndham was, so maybe it was a little later than this, because I think Tom Wyndham was involved in the final, in this somehow that I didn't know about. And Tom was for those of you who wouldn't know, Tom was our marketing director, marketing VP. I don't remember what his title was at Dagger for quite a few years. Great. Did a wonderful job for us. And I think maybe Tom had talked to Mike or something that unbeknownst to me. But I need to follow up with Mike, and I'm still talk to him occasionally, and find out what's the whole story there, because I'm not sure how much how accurate my version is versus the version I've heard from Tom.
Well, I mean, the logo, the name, the boats, they're all iconic. And, really, I think if you delve into it, I mean, what year did you start Dagger?
1988.
And what year did you first make kayaks?
1990.
Okay. So it is 36 years old now.
30, 30, well, kayaks, 38 years old for
So,
in fact, we were incorporated on April 15th. So
okay.
I guess our the birthday of the official founding of the company, if you will, would be 38 years ago in about a week.
Okay. So April 15th. Well, you know what? We might just launch this as close as we can. Let's see. The 15th. Hey, Joe, the 15th is a Wednesday this year, and that's when B-Flow Sessions comes out. So we're going to drop this next Wednesday on the anniversary, on the birthday of Dagger Kayaks. I mean, talk about serendipitous. I mean, this will come out on the birthday.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. But, 38 years old, I mean, really, we've seen kayak companies come and go, and, Dagger has had its ups and downs through the years. It's had different companies buy and sell it, and we'll get into that. But it's got to make you feel really good to see that the brand is still out there producing great kayaks. A lot of people still use them, and good people still there, making those boats.
Yeah, it's obviously not nearly as significant of a brand now. It's been more focused on whitewater and less on all different other types of boats. But yeah, they've done some different ownership, and some people like Scott Byers and Snowy have carried the brand on, and yeah, it does. There's certainly a sense of pride there.
It should be, and so many of us have to thank you for what you created, and that I want to hear your take on seeing paddle sports from its real infancy in the 70s and 80s, and then seeing the explosion, specifically from the whitewater standpoint, whitewater kayaking, in the mid to late 90s through the mid 2000s, when it really exploded, and you had teams on the road from all the different and churning out not just one but maybe two or three new boat designs a year, to then seeing paddle sports kind of start to slow down, and then it had an uptick again during COVID, and then where you see paddle sports going. So if you could just take us through that 30-year history there, paddle sports in general, because you've had a front row seat.
I'll go back a little more than 30 years ago, more, I don't know, to the time when I was at Perception.
Yeah.
And this would have been probably 1982. We had a guy that we hired from the sailboat business, and he said, John Barnett. John said, "You're going to see a day when you actually have team members for your kayaks, and they're not only going to get free kayaks, you're going to pay them to be team members." And I'm like, no way. No way. That'll never happen with kayaking. But of course, you witnessed what did happen. So, repeat your question again, Brad. Sorry.
Well, just take us through the whole, from the 70s and 80s, and I know I said 30 years, but yeah, it's more like 50 years span of history of seeing the very infancy of it, the beginning, to then the explosion through the 90s to then kind of, a leveling out and just, if you look at a graph of the ups and downs of the sport, take us through that whole history.
Well, of course, if you go back to the 70s, especially the early 70s, it was pretty much you made your own gear. Mm-hmm. There was some commercially available product, both domestically and Europe, and what was made domestically was really European designs being made here, and they were all slalom boats, and that was the whitewater world. And but making your own spray skirt, your own paddles, your own boats was all part of what paddling was all about then. And the introduction of plastic really changed everything. Mm-hmm. Made the boats a lot more durable, more affordable, more it lended itself towards boats being made, being mass produced, and I use that term very generously when talking about mass production, or we talk about the paddle sports industry or the kayak industry. It's still very small, but compared to what it was in the early 70s, it's pretty significant. And there was just a big boom though, right about the time I got into it when the movie Deliverance came out. Mm-hmm. The whitewater kayaking was in the Olympics. There was the first plastic kayak with the hollow-form river chaser. There was this whole convergence, and that's also really, at least in the South, I don't know can't really speak to other places around the world, but that was the infancy also of commercial rafting on rivers. Sure. So that exposed a lot of people to whitewater and to kayaking. So that was sort of the first little boom that got it all. That was the big bang, if you will, that got it all. They got it all started, at least from my perspective, which really only there's people who can talk about the days of foal boats and the like, and while I definitely paddled on rivers with people in foal boats, that was not the predominant kayak when. Sure. By the time I came along, it was composites, fiberglass, but then plastics changed everything. So I, after finishing college, and I got married and got a real job, and wasn't paddling as much for a couple of years. Was still paddling some, a couple of years, and then kind of. Got back into it. But anyhow, in that time when I was away from it a lot, in the late 70s, Bill Masters was really getting Perception going. Mm-hmm. And Pete Jett, who was later with me at Dagger, came back and worked with Bill, and then eventually I did as well. But that was really the beginnings of the modern era of kayaking, in my mind, of whitewater kayaking. Okay. And I sort of think of the Perception Mirage as being the first decent whitewater plastic boat. Sure. And it was based off of a European design, but it was a 4-meter boat, a 13 feet 2 inches boat, because it met slalom specs, as everything did. And the growth at that point was not. It was good. We were growing significantly every year in the 5 years I was at Perception, but it wasn't a boom. It was 20-30% a year kind of growth for the company, which was really healthy, but but there really was not much competition out there. We had Hydra, which, as you mentioned, and when we talked earlier, a lot of companies have come and gone. There was Hydra, there
Right.
was Infinity. Those are the two that come to mind, and still some composite companies out there like Phoenix were still we were competing against, but we just dominated the market. And then in the late in the later '80s, we came along. Chan started wave sport a little bit a couple of years before we did. Started off
Okay.
He started off bringing boats from England and
Okay.
putting different logos on them and calling it, and that's where wave sport came from.
Okay.
And I have to think that that competition that happened with Dagger and Perception, Wave Sport. Who am I missing? Prion was a little bit of a player,
Piranha.
and Piranha was just coming on then too. And I have to think that competition really drove the boom that happened from 1990. It was really about the 90s when that happened. It really sort
Right.
of peaked. It peaked about 99
Yeah.
and I say peak. My perspective on all this is more from a business standpoint.
Sure.
And looking at the numbers, knowing how many boats were sold, that's when things really, and that's when all the sponsorship and bringing on teams and all the events and getting outside sponsors like Subaru and Nike and other companies. Mad River had Chevy truck and all that was happening, and that was pretty exciting times. So anyhow, things in terms of whitewater kayaking, things really peaked in the 1999 2000 and started waning a bit from there. And it's I'm probably as guilty as anyone for creating this, but the corporate ownership of kayaking is was it a necessity? I'm not. I could argue that one either way. Was it inevitable? Probably. Was it healthy for kayaking? Was it healthy for kayak companies? I think it'd be pretty hard to make the case that it was anything that it brought anything healthy. It was the outside interests in kayaking were looking way beyond whitewater,
Right.
because that's not where the numbers were or ever would be.
Right.
And so whitewater, took a bit of a back seat in terms of priority and focus and it was hard to maintain that passion, and I don't think that has been really healthy for whitewater kayaking.
But at the end of the day, it's a business like any other.
Yeah, it is, and it's certainly possible that some of these brands, including Dagger, who knows? It may have been out of business 10 or 15 years ago too.
Without
you can't,
the capital. Yeah.
right. We don't know. We
don't know.
We can't say. No,
Right.
we don't know. And
And I guess
so-
Jackson and Liquid Logic and all of them now are kind of falling in the same fate, right? As like part of bigger conglomerates.
yeah, I mean, those might not be the best examples. And Liquid Logic's owned by, it's a plastics company, but it's still a small company. It's not a big
Sure.
big company.
Okay.
And Jackson is is really a standalone company, except now they've made the purchases of Eddie Line and Werner Paddles in the past year or so. And
Sure.
while EJ is no longer part of the picture or part of the ownership, Tony Lunt, who was EJ's partner from the start,
Hmm.
still owns it. The majority interest, anyhow. Dane and Emily own some interest in it as well.
Sure.
And Tony's he's like me these days. I'm afraid he's more of a was a kayaker than is a kayaker, but I'm planning to do. It's a little iffy right now, but still planning to do a Grand Canyon trip with Tony this summer. He's
Oh,
still
nice.
loves his river trips. Yeah,
Well,
and
that's a great
but anyhow,
segue. I mean,
yeah.
and
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
no, you finish your thought. Go ahead.
Um, yeah. I admire. I will say I admire Piranha and what Graham's been able to, has had that company and has owned it and I don't know anything really about the ownership structure. As far as I know, he owns it, and it's been in
Yeah.
business since the since the '70s,
Right.
and he's that's admirable. I like that.
Yeah. And
And
here
not just
lately
there.
they've
Yes,
come out with more new designs.
yeah, and I shouldn't say just them. I mean, you can look at Prion and Letman, and it's more the European model, it seems.
Hmm. Yeah, it seems like there's some new kind of almost like boutique brands with like Waka and Spade and kind of newer brands in the last
Yeah,
10 years or so.
yeah.
Yeah, which it's all healthy. It's all good for the sport.
Let's eddy out and take a quick break. Do you need a break from the cold of a North American winter? Then let's head south to the best whitewater on earth at Pecan Kayak Retreat. Email me at bflowkayak@gmail.com to learn more about how you can take the ultimate paddling adventure in the heart of Chile. Now let's peel out and head downstream.
But I want to shift gears now to talk about your own personal paddling. And one of the questions we ask everybody is perfect flow. Do you remember a time when everything just clicked and it was just looking back, you're like, man, that was one of the most epic, perfect days on the river? Can you tell us one of those days?
I'll rephrase that very slightly. It wasn't a day; it was a river trip.
Okay.
But in a year and a half ago, I did a trip with my son, who had a little time off from grad school, went with me, and we went and did the San Juan River in Utah, which is class 2, maybe a class 3 on there, and that was just the most wonderful
Mm,
5 days of paddling I've had in so many years, and it was partly the place and beautiful river and partly paddling with my son and we were in a canoe together,
mm,
which was really, really nice, a Dagger legend,
hmm.
and when it was also who was on the trip. It was Steve
Sure.
Scarborough and his wife Annie, one of my partners at Dagger, Kent Ford and his wife.
Wow.
All these people had connections to Dagger pretty much. Kent and
Hmm.
his wife Sean, Nancy Wiley, who owned Four Corner River Sports, and I had not seen Nancy in years. It was so wonderful to reconnect with her. Whom I'm missing? Rob Lesser, who
Yeah.
not really was never really connected with Dagger, but one of my. In fact, I talked to Rob today. Somebody I still stay very closely in touch with, and
That's
it was
cool.
just this wonderful, I mean, river trips are generally special, but when you get that great group together and 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 everything clicks and everybody clicks, and that was a special time.
That sounds amazing. And, I'm experiencing this now that I'm coming back into the sport. Things that just really captivate you in paddling may not be the same things that captivated when you were younger, when you were maybe seeking more of the adrenaline rush or things like that. But now, like,
Absolutely.
class 2 can just be the most perfect rapid in the world, where it probably wasn't in your 20s.
Of course, yeah. Harder is better. Scare me. But no, I'm not there anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, like you said, the people, the river, just connecting, relationships, being on the water. That's what's and that's the whole essence of flow, right? Is just being out there and with the people you love.
Absolutely, yeah. And that, I mean, I can't talk about having been in this business for 40 whatever years and not think about the people has been the singular best part of it all. The people I've got to know all over the world, team paddlers, people I meet on the river, employees, business partners, competitors, dealers, and literally all over the globe, and going those places and seeing seeing rivers and seeing other countries, and oh boy, what a wonderful way to make a living. Didn't get rich, but not in terms of money, but did okay and got rich in a lot of other ways.
Yeah, as far as experiences and relationships built, you've got to be a billionaire in those two categories.
Yeah, yeah. Move over, Elon.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. Well, the opposite of a perfect flow, I call flood, and this is not a good flood. This would be like a time when things did not go well in the river. You got any of those experiences you'd like to share, or willing to share, I should say?
Speaking of flood, I think about, and you and I spoke just before this about Chris Spee and I put on the Chattooga one day at Section 4 of the Chattooga one day, and it was about 8 feet and rising fast. And I don't know how much you know the Chattooga, but that's very high water.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we this was in the Perception days. I was in a dancer, and he was in a saber, and we got down to the first hardish rapid, which is screaming left turn, and it looked intimidating. So we got out on the river left shore and hiked up the side of the river a ways and pulled our boats up, hiked up the river, and came back 10 minutes later, saw a line, came back 10 minutes later. Our boats were floating in the eddy. So water was coming up really, really fast. It was just kind of shocking. So I don't know what level it was when what level were we on at, because it was changing so fast. But anyhow, it was huge water. We got down to Woodall Shoals, and the short version of the story is Spee made it through. We looked at different routes, right and left and all over, and ended up running pretty far to the right. And there were so many. Spee ran, gets through. I get in my boat. I'm ready to go, and I was just waiting for the logs to go by, waiting for a break in logs. And finally, there's a I can see no logs coming. I peel out, I head downstream, and I end up stuck in a hole. Not a hole. I don't even know where that hole is in the rapid. Certainly not the famous hole at Woodall.
Right.
Couldn't get out. Finally, my skirt blew, and when my skirt blew, I finally came out of the hole, and I was still in the boat, and tried to. There was an eddy at the very bottom, where the takeout there is, and I was trying to get to that eddy, but my boat, I had like one float bag in the whole boat, one in the back, and the boat was just too much water. I couldn't get there, so I just kept going downstream. Said I'll find somewhere to stop, and I just couldn't get the boat anywhere. And finally, I'm getting close to 7 foot, and I thought I better get out of this. And so I swim out the boat, and Chris later told me that he said it was not long after I got out of the boat that it wrapped around a tree, which I didn't see that. And anyhow, he tried to keep going. He swam at 7 foot, and we found after about 30 minutes of looking for each other, we found each other in the woods and hiked out.
Oh my
So
gosh.
not our finest day.
But a great story to tell. Everybody survived. And you
Yeah,
got a good story to tell.
survived. We survived. So
What
that's what I
what
call that.
flow Oh, go ahead.
I just said I'd call that low flow, I guess.
Yeah, low
Even
flow
though
or flow. Yeah,
even low flow, high CFS.
exactly. What flow advice would you offer? I want you to think about two groups of paddlers. One, a new paddler coming into the sport, trying to learn, and then another, an older paddler who may have been away from the sport and who's coming back.
Oh, well, maybe some similar advice there. Certainly for the new paddler, something I've always encouraged people is to teach the way that I learned, and that is you learn on water that you're not afraid of, and hone your skills. Learn about eddies. Learn about boofing. Learn the basics. And there's most of the time there's a class 4 move and a class 2 rapid.
That's right.
And learn that, where the consequences are not great, where you don't get scared, where you don't endanger yourself or somebody else who might have to come out and rescue you, and don't feel pushed to. I see so many people in the Southeast now that if they're not, and things have obviously changed here in the last couple of years with floods, but it's like if you're not paddling the green at the end of your first year of paddling, you're moving too slow.
Right.
I just don't buy. I don't buy into that. I think that's.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's harmful in a lot of ways. And I guess I would say something similar to people who are getting back into it, which is something I'm trying to do. Relearn to enjoy class 2 or class 3 or whatever
Yeah.
your level of comfort is.
Right.
There's once, when I did consider myself, whether I was or not is debatable, but whether I ever was, but when I did consider myself to be a good paddler, it was, I felt like I had to keep up, and
Right.
I had to paddle this, and I had to do this move, and I had to keep up in different ways. And now I certainly don't feel any kind of. It took me a long time to get over that. I
Yeah.
should have got over that sooner. I would have been happier with my paddling if I'd have got over that, 20 years ago instead of 10 years ago or whatever it was. And because when you watch, and I'm sure you're not as far behind this curve as I am, but what you can do compared to what the Dane Jacksons of the world do now. It's hard, and there are a lot of other paddlers I could have put in there, but Dane came to mind for obvious reasons. It's a whole different ball game now, and there's just no nobody needs to feel bad that they can't keep up with what other people are doing now. Those people learned on the experience, based on the experiences and that we had, and on the equipment that we helped develop, and et cetera, et cetera. Just go back and enjoy yourself on whatever you feel comfortable on, and what makes you happy.
I certainly felt that whenever I was a sponsored competitive paddler. I was in the era of the sponsored athlete on the road, and the era of the whitewater kayaking videos, and they showed either the highlights or the lowlights, and you definitely felt pressure to push to a higher level to try to get into videos or to try to get sponsored and look at the waterfall I ran or something like that. And there was a lot of times where I definitely could have pushed myself higher than, maybe I always paddled a notch below my skills, kind of exactly what you're talking about. Like, I did not want to be in a situation where I felt like I was out of control. But it was hard not to try to push yourself to get recognized.
Yeah, and there were times when I felt a certain, that I was a known paddler, and that people had certain expectations of me.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably
Yeah.
a mistake to ever think that way. But
Yeah, for sure. So another segment that we have, and sponsored by our good friends at Pecan Kayak Retreat, is our pro hot tip. And I ask people about different things about what they really know about. And I want to know from you a pro hot tip on the business side of paddle sports. If somebody wanted to start a business or go into business or work for a paddle sports company, what would be your pro hot tip to them?
oh
Besides,
boy,
don't do it.
yeah, it's challenging. It's challenging times in the paddle sport, in the whitewater and paddle sports world. But if someone was thinking about starting a new company, I would have to say you really better have something innovative right now, because there's a lot of there are good companies out there. There's good product out there, and to you can be a little boutique company perhaps, but if you want to do anything more than that, you better better have something new and different from what other people have, whether it's a life jacket, a paddle, or a boat, and that's pretty challenging these days.
Mm-hmm.
But it's 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 a crowded market.
Yeah.
If someone wants a job in paddle sports, I think you better. I'd have to think about that one a little bit, Brad. I think about our good buddy Mike Steck, and I could name Gerald Eldridge. I could name some others who became significant parts of companies I've worked for, Dagger and others over the years, but where they literally started at the bottom. Mike Steck started off seaming composite boats for us. That's about as down and dirty of a job as you can
Right.
get, and went on to be a major driving force in the creativity of that we saw from Dagger. But it may well take starting that way, and to doing whatever you can get a job doing to. But I've witnessed a lot of people over the years who started who had a really good guy at Jackson who started off in packing up boats in the shipping department, and a few years later he was running customer service for us. So
Wow.
it can be done. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Joe,
Just don't expect to get rich.
yeah, they don't expect to get rich doing it. That's for sure. This next segment is our rapid fire, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw out some topics to you, and you got to give me your Mount Rushmore of these topics about kayaking. I'm going to start with an easy one. I know which one you're going to say is your number one. So like this, instead of a Mount Rushmore, this would be a pyramid, and I know which one would be at the top. Kayak designs of all time.
Oh yeah, of course the RPM is there. I always say that's the one that put my kids through college.
That's right.
Boy, after that, I really liked the Red Line, which is the one we did right after that.
I love that boat.
Yeah, I was really involved at Jackson with the Antics series, and
Okay.
really
Yeah, those
really
are great.
enjoyed mostly the first one, and the next couple versions they made it a lot better than what we did the first time. But that was a really fun one to work on. So and I'll go way back to the of course I could throw the Dancer in there. That was really a really fun one to be a part of. But the Mirage that preceded the
Okay.
Dancer is not as well known these days, but that a big leap forward for a plastic boat in the 70s. Actually, it was 1980. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What about rivers of all time?
Well, the Chattooga is sort of that, like the RPM. It sort of stands alone
Okay.
for me.
Yeah.
I met my wife and our first date was on the Chattooga in a canoe. So
Oh, nice.
I could go on with a lot of good stories there. But the Fuda is such a world class river. One I only did one time. The West Prong in the Smokies, just a wonderful run. I've always enjoyed the Watauga. It's just a real treat of a river for me. Also here in the southeast. Yeah, so
Yeah.
Mount Rushmore has four. There's four rivers. Okay.
Yep. Countries of all time to paddle in. Could be culture, rivers, anything, just the whole package.
Well, obviously the United States has great paddling and whatever. I did many trips to Japan teaching paddling,
Okay.
and probably did 6 or 7 trips over there teaching, and did a lot of other
Nice.
trips too. But in those times teaching, I got to paddle a lot of different rivers over there. That was really special. I guess in terms of just Chile, Ecuador are all sort of obvious answers, and they're fantastic. One I really enjoyed paddling in. Again, the culture, the whole experience is paddling in southern France. France
Okay.
is just fantastic rivers
Sure.
in the French Alps.
Yeah. Um, Kayakers of all time.
Oh, ooh. Ones I know and have paddled with, or just ones I know of, or how would you do it? However I want to do it.
However you want to measure the stick there. It's up to you.
Well, okay, I'll just stick to people that that I knew and paddled with and whatever. Yeah. I mean, the Jackson family, Eric, Dane, Emily. I mean, just incredible paddlers. I've
Yeah.
never seen anybody as comfortable in a boat from when I knew him as a little kid as Dane Jackson. I mean,
Right.
just amazing. One of my great friends paddling, and I've got a flatwater trip with him for this summer. Rusty Dunbar, not somebody a lot of people would know anymore. Rusty was like the king of the Ocoee and won all the early Ocoee rodeos.
Okay.
Rusty was just such a joy to paddle with, and we had so many good times. Have to put in super skilled.
Okay.
Mark Lyle,
Yeah.
how do you not have Mark Lyle on a list? What a great, what a joy. Just so much fun to paddle with, as well as last time we paddled together, I think, was on the Ocoee, and I think we laughed the whole way down the river. Just so much fun.
I've heard he's been spotted on the Ocoee again this past summer, so I'm hoping to see him this summer out.
Yeah. He says he's done a little bit of creeking.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get Mark to be on the show, but as you can imagine, he's pretty reluctant.
Yeah.
Well, Joe,
Yeah.
the last question I have for you is called Final Flow. And this is what I want you to imagine, that the river gods have come down and they said, you've had a great run, and this is your last time to be in a kayak. But the good news is you get to pick your boat, you get to pick your river, and you get to pick your crew, and you get to be any age too. What would that be?
Well, I guess I think I just have to go back to those early years and think about paddling on the Chattooga. It'd be paddling the Chattooga, and the guys that I paddled with so much in the '70s, some of which were later worked with, but not all, was Don Hamilton and Pete Jett, Mike Sieber, Brett Cochran. I'm sure I'm missing some here, but those were just really wonderful times of paddling, and it was all still new enough, and boy, so I would say a Section 4 Chattooga trip in a RPM, of course, and
Of course.
and yeah, those guys from the probably even get Bill Masters in there,
There you go.
from the '70s, and pretty special times.
They were, and I mean, Joe, what you created, I mean, it still stands, and what a legacy that you've left. And now I know you do some work with Jackson Kayak, so getting to be a part of two big brands in the industry, but the things that you did for for Dagger Kayaks, continue to do for Jackson Kayaks, but the thing that you started with Dagger.
Well, I'm retired now, but
Oh, you're retired now from Jackson? Okay. Well, good. Enjoy that
yeah,
retirement, but what a legacy you've left, and thanks for being on B-Flow Sessions.
look forward to taking my grandchildren on the rivers now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I can't wait for this episode to come
Thanks,
out
Brad.
on the birthday.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, Joe, thanks again for being on.
Appreciate the time.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of B-Flow Sessions, where we explore how paddlers find their flow on the water and in life. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, leave a rating, or share it with a friend. It truly helps us grow the community. And a huge thank you to Pecan Kayak Retreat for sponsoring today's episode. If you're ready for a world-class Chilean whitewater adventure, email me at bflowkayak@gmail.com and I'll help you get dialed in. Until next time, keep finding your flow.